Good evening, everyone. Just before coming out here earlier, a friend so graciously reminded me that you can't fail at Failure Lab right out here. So David, thank you for the reminder, and thank you all for your grace as I bumble a little bit through this, so I appreciate it. The year was 1988. There I was, rocking a mullet, in my 5th grade school photo with the faux laser light show in the background. You know the one. This was going to be my year. Finally, I was the big kid on campus, and I was determined to live it up before I became a big nobody in middle school. As I'm sure you remember, grade school came with a severe lack of maturity and a whole lot of drive to be cool. My best friend and I were determined to have a great school year that year, and we did for the most part, until we made a decision that has impacted me and stayed with me ever since. That year, a quiet and cute boy transferred to our school. His name was Jason. He was unassuming, but he was also very friendly. Of course, being the cool girls that we were, my friend and I decided that the best way to treat Jason was to mess with him as much as possible. We'd jab at him, we'd lock him out of the classroom, and we'd do generally everything we could to tease him, because that's what you did. At the time, I didn't notice if Jason felt sad or offended in how we treated him, but what I do remember is that at one point, Jason stopped showing up for school. After several days, my friend and I decided we'd make things right. We planned to head to Jason's house after school and say our apologies, let him know we were just kidding, and we really liked him, and everything would be just fine. But when we got there, he was gone. And I mean, totally gone. Seemingly just as quickly as he entered my life, he was out of it. They had moved. To this day, I have no idea where Jason went. How did he move so fast? Was he planning on moving the whole time? Did he leave because of his experience at our school? Did he leave because of his experience with me? The way I acted towards Jason and the words I used to tease him have stuck with me all these years. Looking back on it, I wish I had chosen to handle things differently. I wish I hadn't spoken hurtful words and instead used my voice to lift up the new kid that have moved to our neighborhood and our school. But I failed. Our voices, they contain so much power. We use them to make bold statements, generate convincing arguments, and elevate others. But we also use them to belittle, berate, and hurt people. And sometimes, like I learned with Jason, choosing whether or not to speak can be the most difficult art of all. Fast forward to 2013-ish. Now, a grown-ass adult, I was old enough to have learned from my experience in the 5th grade, yet still naive enough to act selfishly in the pursuit of being noticed and advancing in my career. I was working a new job, things were going great, but despite working in a male-dominated industry, I was being recognized for my talents and gaining seats at tables that often did not include women. I was feeling on top of the world, and I was determined to reach the top and stand proud as a woman when I got there who had fought through it all. The kicker, though, through that process, I lost sight of who I was. Instead of learning from the mistakes of the past, I fell into wanting to be just one of the guys. Over the course of a few years, I was involved in many scenarios where I either engaged in locker room banter or didn't speak up when I heard such banter being used to hurt others. I can specifically remember sitting around a boardroom table laughing and participating in language that I knew was hurtful. I knew better. In my head, I faced a constant struggle. If I said something and spoke up against the hurtful language, I likely wouldn't be asked to join the same tables I wanted so desperately to sit at. But if I participated in the banter, I would be seen as fun and fun to be around. The world is complicated for everyone, and it can be devastatingly so as a woman. as Gloria, played by America Ferrera, so eloquently put it in a recent Barbie movie, which many of you may have seen. If not, you should. She said, "You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people." She goes on to say, "You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail. Never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, it's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault." The equation is complex and incredibly contradictory. However, we are all still responsible for our own words and actions. And if you distill everything down to its most basic form, most problems can be solved by properly using your voice. Here, even as a well-rounded adult who had learned so much along the way, failure was still a part of who I was. That brings me to today. I'm an even growner-ass adult. Standing before you now, I humbly admit that I still find myself in situations where I don't speak up, even when I know it's clear that I should. Just recently, I was with a group of people that I highly respect and that I think also probably highly respect me. We were engaged in conversation that offered an opportunity for me to speak up, to correct, to educate. But in the moment, I remained silent. Even as this was happening, I knew that I was staying silent, and I knew I was picking the wrong path. We had mutual respect for one another, which means I'm sure they would have appreciated me speaking up or respected it. And even if somehow they didn't, and I wasn't invited back, at least I would have respected myself and the decision to speak up. But I failed. And so despite everything I've learned, I still fail by being silent, and I still fail by saying things that I shouldn't. In many cases, I am now at the literal and figurative table that I so desperately wanted, and I'm privileged. And I now have an obligation and a responsibility to speak up on behalf of others that are not seated across from me. On behalf of women, on behalf of those that are underrepresented, on behalf of my daughter, my sons, my family, and my community. Failure is absolutely unavoidable. And this is where I would want to tell you and try and round it out with all the conclusions and everything I've learned, and I fixed everything along the way, but I won't. And I would love to tell you how I got this moving forward, and we can all do this too. But I won't. So I will leave this here and sit in this moment with you. Thank you.